Phil, thanks very much. Good. You know, a lot of stuff in there. I just want to, if you're reading ahead, a couple of those companies, Uber in particular, will be up here. Another company that I know Benchmark invested in, Nextdoor, and that whole topic of disruption is so key in this market. Also healthcare, I'll just make a note. You know, one of the panels I want to put together is healthcare and fitness in mobile locations. So if you have good ideas, talk to me about that. Okay, our next panel, you know, Bill mentioned the impact of the mobile device in creating new opportunities. One of the companies that's really ridden that growth in the capabilities of mobile devices has been Groupon, obviously driving the daily deal, moving that more onto the mobile space, and clearly a company that, you know, many measures of success. If press mentions is one, a company that's certainly been at the forefront of that, and we're very, very privileged to have Andrew Mason, the CEO of Groupon, here today. He's going to be interviewed by E.B. Boyd. E.B. is a tech writer who covers Silicon Valley, most recently worked for Fast Company, and so she's going to be talking to Andrew Mason. So let me introduce them.
You can call me whatever you want. AU is fine.
Do I come out now? Yeah. Are we good, Philly? Are these the right chairs?
You know, I actually don't know. I should ask the photographer person. Is these the right chairs?
When you've had only 2 people in the past, have they sat in these chairs or those chairs?
Okay. Excellent. So, Andrew.
E.B. or Liza?
E.B. or Liza. You've had a pretty active couple of weeks. And the most recent news, I guess, that came out at the end of last week, which a lot of people, I think, are most interested in, so we'll just start off with that right off the bat, is a story that came out, I guess on Friday, that Google was possibly sniffing around again. So is there any basis to those stories?
I mean, as I'm sure you would expect, we can't, we never have and never will comment on any of the unsubstantiated rumors in the press. So there's nothing I can say about that, and everything that I've said about the news at Groupon in the last couple of weeks is everything I have to say about it. Inside Groupon, it's very much like any other last couple of weeks. We're just plowing away at trying to build a great company. So
should we expect any time in the next year or so for Groupon to be acquired by anybody?
We're really focused on trying to build a great company and don't spend a lot of time thinking about that.
Okay, fair enough. So let me ask you some of the broader questions that have come up in the last couple of weeks, which maybe you can address. When 2 weeks ago all the noise came out about the board meeting and there was some thinking about replacing you, one of the questions that gets bandied about a lot is Google at a sort of a similar point in its trajectory, Larry and Sergey both incredibly bright, incredibly energetic, but at a certain point the opportunity sitting in front of Google was so large that there was a thinking that maybe we needed to bring in somebody who was a bit more of a seasoned professional. So that question has been asked with regard to Groupon as well. You know, you're enormously bright, you're enormously talented, but why doesn't...
Unit, by the way. You've never worked with me.
That's true.
Look, I've said everything that I have to say about these subjects, and we're focused on looking forward.
Okay, fair enough. Let me ask you another question, though, that has come up.
Keep trying. Let's not talk about mobile or Groupon. That'd be boring. Okay,
no, we will get there. We will get there. Give me credit. We're just barely 5 minutes into this. We've got plenty of time. So one other question that, again, is just on people's minds. We will get to the mobile stuff in a second, but I just want to get this out of the way because I know there are a bunch of people who are paying attention, and these are sort of the questions on their mind. So with the stock price where it is, your answer with regard to the stock price is always we're focusing on the long term, which of course makes sense. You want Groupon to be around for a long time. You want to make sure that when you hit marks 3-5 years from now, that it's smooth sailing. And yet the difference between now and say 18 months ago is that Groupon is a public company and there are shareholders. So now that you are a public company, don't you owe it to shareholders to focus on more immediate results?
I think that's a great question. And I think ultimately the pact that we made with shareholders is we're trying to create a company that creates value over a long horizon of time. And the fact of the matter is anyone that runs a company will tell you is you can very easily make decisions that will be beneficial to the company in the short term, but those companies will be harmful to the very same shareholders that are benefiting from it in the short term over the long term. So I think the agreement we made with shareholders when we went public is, despite any bumpiness or volatility along the way, we would be focused on doing the right thing to maximize the value of the stock over a long horizon of time. And if there are shareholders that don't have a tolerance for that, then this isn't the best stock to own.
Fair enough. So one last question along these lines. The flip side of the question about why doesn't Groupon need an Eric Schmidt is, okay, so we could either put somebody in at the CEO level, or we could put somebody who's a seasoned professional in at the COO level. And recently, you promoted Cal, I apologize, is it Raman or Raymond? Raman.
But that's revealing at the extent of the research that you've done, so I appreciate that.
Fair enough. So Cal Raman is now the COO. You previously had Rob Solomon in that position, who came from Yahoo. You had Margot Georgiadis, who came from Google. And now Cal Raman, who comes from Amazon. He actually has a very interesting background. He has more of a retail background than the previous two COOs. He was CEO of Drugstore.com for a good long while. He was at Walmart sort of in the pre-internet days. And then, of course, was an executive at Amazon. Again, if you're talking to the street, should that be reassuring to them? Is the third time the charm?
We've taken what a typical company goes through in about a decade and compressed it into 4 years. Groupon, we just celebrated our 4-year anniversary, and in that period of time, we've grown to be a company that's doing over $5 billion in annual gross billings, and have about 12,000 employees. So as a company scales, you need to bring in different, even though the vision and the strategy stays similar, you need to bring in different operating skill sets in order to accommodate the changing needs of the company. And that's what we've done. And we've brought in people who are appropriate for the time in the company, and nobody gets every hire right, but we feel really good about the executive team we have in place today.
Okay, switching gears slightly, I wanted to ask you a question that I've been thinking about as you've been adding more and more services. Mm-hmm. So we in the media constantly refer to Groupon as a daily deals company. It's become a shorthand over the last few years since this industry emerged. But the thing that I wonder about is what is Groupon? Because it has moved into other areas. So it moved into Groupon Goods, which has been doing enormously well, which is no longer sort of a Groupon in our conventional sense of what a Groupon is. You've been adding services for small businesses, whether it is the recent acquisitions, Breadcrumb and Savored, or Groupon Payments, which I guess launched a couple months ago, as well as Groupon Scheduler. So is it, as we write about it, and it's not just writing about it, but as we collectively conceive of Groupon, because one of the challenges that Groupon goes through is those of us who are trying to assess it, whether it's in the media or on Wall Street, are trying to figure out what model to apply to it. And the daily deal thing is a totally new industry. But if we're thinking about daily deals in the way we thought about them 2 years ago, are we off track? Like, what is Groupon? How should we think about it? How would you describe it?
So before Groupon was Groupon, it was actually a collective action kind of social platform called The Point, which was a way to harness the collective action of people to do something as a group that one person couldn't do by him or herself. And Groupon was one application of that collective action platform. It was saying, let's get a group of people together, let's rally their collective purchasing power in order to get a deal somewhere that one person couldn't procure on their own. And when we decided to focus on that model, we were thinking very much of it from the perspective of a consumer in need of discovering the world around them. There's all these interesting things to do in your city, but people need an excuse. People need to be pushed out the door. And one deal a day, focusing on something cool to do in their city, and then offered at half price, is that opportunity that you need to say, gosh, if I'm ever going to go rock climbing, if I'm ever going to go on a hot air balloon ride or take a riverboat architectural tour down the Chicago River, now is the time to do it. As we scaled that model, we realized that we were building something extremely unique. We were building the assets, the two sides of the coin that you need to have a real local marketplace. Relationships with hundreds of thousands of merchants across 48 countries that we had built through brute force by going door to door and shaking hands. And nobody else, with the exception of maybe the Yellow Pages, had something like this. And then also a consumer-facing product, relationships with now 200 million subscribers and about 40 million active customers. So what we realized is that we had acquired these assets at precisely the time that mobile was paving the way for local commerce, which is one of the last remaining massive industries that hasn't been truly disrupted yet by the internet, to make this transition from offline to online. 5 years from now, whether it's Groupon doing it or not, the way that you buy things locally is going to be fundamentally transformed. And the catalyst for that is mobile. It's what broadband was for video and enabling it to go online. So because of that, we think of ourselves as primarily a local e-commerce company, and we aim to enable the same kind of revolution that Amazon enabled for buying retail products, but only doing it with local businesses and helping to plug every local business into the internet. Now we've also discovered that as part of growing our pure daily deal business, meaning sending people an email every morning and getting them to buy something that they didn't intend to buy when they woke up that morning, that a really nice, something that our consumers love is extending that value proposition beyond just local, but also into products and travel. So that's how we've grown the daily deal business, but we're also taking these assets that we've built in order to build the world's first real local e-commerce marketplace. So
can you paint a picture, say like 5 years from now or whatever, at whatever point in the future this transformation happens? Just walk us through a scenario, paint a picture of how what that looks like and how it's different than today.
Sure. Well, I think it'll be, it changes for both, as any marketplace. It changes the way that both the buyers and sellers do business and experience the world around them. So for buyers or our customers, I think it becomes easier to discover interesting things, whether it's new businesses or whether it's offerings at the businesses that you frequent on a regular basis. And it's easier to save. We can bring all of these local businesses within the reach of more customers by simply enabling dynamic pricing and making it possible for customers to get things at less. And we do that because today 80% of businesses are 20% full at any given moment in time, and that's the problem that we aim to solve. We want to bring the same kind of yield management and customer dial tools that every that large billion-dollar corporations have, and make them available to every mom and pop shop.
And you have said on several occasions that in your mind mobile is the enabler for this disruption. Is that because, so mobile these days means a couple different things. It means I'm moving around, and so wherever I am, my device knows where I am and therefore can configure the services it's providing to me accordingly. Or when you say mobile, is it just because mobile is becoming the computer of choice for a lot of people?
It is becoming the computer of choice for a lot of people, but what it means is that for the first time, people have their computer of choice in their pocket at any given moment of time, and local commerce does not happen from behind your office desk looking at a desktop computer. when you decide that you're hungry or you're bored, you're on a street corner and you're trying to decide whether to go left or right. And the fact that now mobile devices allow you, can participate in that decision is why it's an enabler.
Okay. So let's dig a little bit deeper into Groupon and mobile. You've talked about how about a third of transactions that Groupon sees are now taking place on mobile devices. And not just, I'm hungry, so let me get, $20 off on a $40 meal for Thai, but actually people are buying vacations on mobile, they're buying high-end goods on mobile, sitting somewhere, they're making a decision to spend $1,000 or $2,000. What are you seeing there?
Well, I think Groupon has been successful on mobile for two reasons, and actually our mobile customers are our best customers. They spend more money than our purely desktop customers. And in part it's because of Groupon's nature as a company where most of our business is local. But it's also the way that we present deals. We're curation over comprehensiveness. So we tend to do the hard work of deciding what are one or two or three great things or places that we can recommend and presenting that to the user instead of giving them a catalog with thousands of choices and forcing them to compare and contrast. So we have a brand that our customers have come to trust to make recommendations on their behalf. And that means that we can present our content to users, one deal at a time in a way that's conducive to the mobile form factor. And it's a much better experience than searching and browsing through dozens or hundreds of different items. So I think that preference or the bias towards curation has allowed Groupon to make the transition to mobile much easier than perhaps other internet companies.
I was also thinking about that because you've talked about that before about Amazon is I know what I want, so let me look and sit and compare, versus Groupon, which is serving things up, hey, wouldn't you be delighted with this thing? Is there something about the psychology of for want of a better word, the internet consumer that's shifted? Because 10, 12 years ago when the first internet boom happened, Amazon came on the market, the internet consumer had a certain mindset of like, oh wow, there's all this stuff available to me, I can go find it, I can ask for it, it's going to show up on my doorstep. But has the psychology changed where we're now just like overwhelmed by choice, and we actually would rather have someone just say, this is totally awesome, I have confidence that this thing is totally awesome, and I'm just going to run with it and not do that sort of search and compare?
That's a really interesting question. I mean, I think absolutely the psychology of the internet user has changed over time. I mean, I'm not an expert on the topic, but if you just think about, if I think from our own experience, we see that the psychology of the internet user is different in different countries. It's very different in North America than it is for China, for example, which has led to a lot of the struggles that we had as a business in China. The same business model doesn't work, in part because consumers think about the internet in a different way. They still access content through portals like the way Yahoo was, as opposed to search engines. Email wasn't as prevalent as of a driver of business for us as it is in North America. I think that my brief experience as an internet entrepreneur has led me to believe that the ideas that are successful are ones that are just one iteration removed from something that people are already familiar with. So when Amazon was founded, it was taking an offline model of Walmart and moving it online. And if they had tried to at the same time become heavy curators or focus on one item, for example, it might be too different from something that they are already familiar with to really catch on. We had that experience when we were The Point. It was too abstract and complicated and too many things at once, and we ended up spending 5 minutes just trying to get our users to understand what it was, as opposed to Groupon, which was very easy to understand and very familiar. And it's there's no technology about Groupon that the first version of Groupon that we launched 4 years ago that would lead one to believe that it couldn't have existed 10 years ago. So perhaps it's just how seasoned internet users were and if they were ready for something like that.
So let me ask you a little bit about small businesses. You're throwing all these tools at them. Some of them are mobile tools. I used to work for a company that made software for small business users, and our sort of mental model was that they weren't necessarily early adopters, they weren't necessarily cutting edge, for no other reason than that they weren't in business in order to master technology. They were in business to do whatever their business was, whether it was surfing or chocolate or restaurants. What are you seeing? Is there, given that all of us are mastering technology in our private lives, are small business owners more sort of cutting edge and forward thinking today than they might have been 5 or 10 years ago?
My experience is that small business owners are extremely intelligent and sophisticated, but they're not MBA types. They're not thinking about, like, if we had something that we used to call the ROI calculator that helped them that helped them understand how much money they made off of a Groupon campaign, and we had to rebrand it because nobody knew what ROI meant. However, they're very sophisticated about how to create a great customer experience. I worked for a little bit a couple months ago in a restaurant just to try to get a sense of it, and I was amazed by how sophisticated the owner was about the smallest detail about getting the customer experience right. In fact, I was intimidated by how what a perfectionist this woman was about it. And I also think that they are willing to use technology when the value proposition to them is very clear. Like, a lot of us use technology for technology's sake. We're early adopters. We get a kick out of trying new things. Small business owners don't have time for that. But like the restaurant that I worked in, they had a online reservation system, they had an online ordering system, they had an electronic point of sale system, all of which were extremely complex. They didn't talk to each other, and they should have. In other words, it would have made their lives a lot easier if they did. And they were very adept at using these things, and they did it because they had to, because they saw a clear value proposition. So, I think that's what we've seen with Groupon is we get customers in the door for small businesses in a way that nobody else in the world can. It's even offline or online, there's never been such an effective way to get a large number of new customers and a large amount of exposure for your business. And because that, whether it's the merchants are willing to use and learn the technology. And when we started, most of our business was done through paper vouchers, through customers printing out a piece of paper and bringing it into the business, and the business would have a table that they could use to cross-check all the voucher numbers. And you'd go into a car wash place to use your Groupon, and you'd literally see a stack, a foot high of Groupon vouchers that this business is tolerating and putting up with. So when we introduced our mobile merchant application that made all this stuff automated and validation automated, they thought that was a huge step forward. They have a huge tolerance for complexity when they see the value for their business, and that's the advantage that we've always had.
So let's talk about Groupon payments for a second, because that sort of fits into that whole space. You launched Groupon payments just recently. It, as with Square and other services out there, allows small business people to take payments via dongles on their mobile devices. That is a big space where there's a lot of very strong players. Square is new, but they're doing great. You've got PayPal and others. Why do you think that you can compete in that space?
Well, we're not getting in that space with the goal of competing with anyone. As with everything else, we're doing it for the purpose of making our core value proposition for customers and merchants stronger. And it's a natural extension for us for that reason. By by integrating with a merchant's payment system and their credit card and transaction processing, we can vastly simplify the process of Groupon redemption. We can easily track ROI. We can do things like we can track whether customers are new or repeat customers, what the overspend was on top of the value of the Groupon. Did the customer come back? And we can put this all into a calculation that allows us to very precisely determine the profitability of a campaign for merchants. And merchants love that. So it's all about making our core product and our ability to help merchants grow their business stronger. And the way we've gone about it is we've said, what's the biggest pain point of the experience that customers or merchants have with using Groupon today, and what can we do to fix that? And we decided that that payments was the right choice. At the same time, we can use our scale and our primary business in order to offer merchants that work with Groupon a guaranteed lowest rate, guaranteed lower than anyone else out there in the world. And that's something that nobody else can offer, and it strengthens the relationship between us and our merchants.
So that service went out 2 months ago, is that right? September, 3 months?
Something like that, yeah.
So this is a very short time, but still, have you heard or seen anything in the real world usage of that sort of you didn't expect and you found surprising?
You know, it's very early, so we've only had positive surprises so far. The merchants that are using it seem to really enjoy it, but it's a very young product, and we have a lot to do before we feel satisfied with its trajectory.
So let me ask you about mobile and international. International obviously is a pain point for Groupon right now. You've talked about how Groupon solved for market share and that there's sort of underlying infrastructure issues that have proved to be a challenge. Does mobile help fix that? Is mobile part of the turnaround for international for Groupon?
Yeah, mobile is a big part of it, but some of the things that we have to do in the international business are just taking the playbook that we've established in North America and applying that overseas. It's things like personalization. We don't get nearly as many complaints as we once did about people getting pole dancing deals, because now the pole dancing deals go to the pole dancers because our personalization has gotten sufficiently sophisticated in North America, but we still have none of that overseas. So that's really what we're focused on first and foremost, but mobile will play a part in it as well, for sure.
Okay. Conventional wisdom has been that the daily deal business is a tough one to really be successful in because the barriers to entry are so low. And yet, in the last 2 years, while we've seen a lot of companies enter the space, we've also seen a lot leave the space. So was that conventional wisdom wrong?
Apparently. Yeah, apparently it was wrong. Now, all we've ever done is stayed focused on doing the right thing for our customers and trying to create the best possible service. And we're now in a position where we feel very good about our market leadership position in the majority of our countries. We think more from a competitive point of view. We think more about who is going to come at local commerce from an angle other than daily deals necessarily, because building the infrastructure you need in order to be successful in our business is extraordinarily difficult. I mean, we have about 12,000 employees, and managing that and managing a global operation and scaling that as quickly as we have is not a trivial thing to do.
So I just wanted to end on one question, which is actually the antithesis of mobile, but sort of was interesting and caught my eye, which was that just recently Groupon Hong Kong opened a concept store, like an actual physical retail place. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, it has to do with the goods business and the fact that we've really seen our customers take a liking to discovering curated, unbeatable offers on products just as much as on local things. This is a way that they can they can see what we're offering, and they can pick things up. So it's very early, but we're excited about it. It's just a small experiment that we're doing in Hong Kong.
Okay. So that is it for us. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.